Hi folks, well I hope you enjoyed the first day's training and we're going to do a little bit of revision next. So you should hopefully see a slideshow where we're going to look at some examples of chat communication that could be improved. And these are real examples from Dynatrace. So what we're going to be revising today is of course those skills and aspects of the first day of training that we covered, dealing with emotions, difficult people, using diplomatic language, and of course the most important skill, active listening. So let's move on to our first example. You might want to stop the video during this so you can just look through the chat example. What is going on here? Well, basically we have a situation where the customer is frustrated and is being sarcastic. That's the emotion that they're showing. We see that in their messaging. Haha, that's so funny. He's also criticizing the type of font and background that's being used. And you can see further down, he's even put a sarcastic little photograph in there to show how frustrated he is. So what do we do in this situation? Well, the first thing is that we don't attack the emotion, but we do recognize it. We don't run away from it either. So you can say something such as, well, I can see you're frustrated, so maybe you can tell me what the issue is. So that's what we want to do. We want to invite information from the customer. We want to find out why he's having this experience. So what we shouldn't do is take offense. We shouldn't get upset ourselves, and we shouldn't, of course, be sarcastic back. We want to actively listen. We want to explore those issues. So again, you want to say something like, I can see that you're frustrated. I want to help, so please tell me what the issues are. If you look at our points on the left here, you can see use of English gonna, so going to do something. I would suggest that you don't use slang like that. It's not the customer it's used at, it's the customer representative has used that. So I would avoid that. Say going to. Nobody can take offense at you using the proper English terminology, but they could take offense if you use slang like this. It also maybe suggests that you're not taking it as seriously as you should, or you're not quite as professional as you should be. I know that's not necessarily the case, but it's the way a customer could say it. So be careful with that. I mean, if a customer uses abbreviations and uses slang like that, and then perhaps that's fine for you to match that and do it, but you shouldn't be the one who initiates that. Okay, so let's move on to our next example. Abusive usage. So what are the issues here? Again, you might want to stop the tape and have a look through the chat. But basically what we see here is a customer has opened 5 tickets, one after another, on the same issue, and has been reported for chat abuse. But the real issue for us, of course, is why has that happened? The customer obviously has felt that they haven't had their issue dealt with first time round, or indeed a second or third, or even a fourth time round. They've come back a 5th time. How do we deal with that? Well, of course, we need to find out what the issues are. Again, you're going to have to employ active listening here. You have to make it very clear to the customer that you're there to help them, but they have to help you. They have to tell you what the issues are. By active listening, you repeat back to them so that you show that you understood. And it also gives the opportunity for the customer to say, no, well, actually, that's not quite right. What I meant was, or else maybe even to say that there's something else that you should know. Now, it takes quite some time to repeat things back, so you want to shorten that, especially when you're in a chat. We looked at active listening on a verbal level, so we were using terms like, so what you said is, so what your main point is. So if I understand you correctly, you mean this. You don't have time for that in a chat. So you want to cut that down. So you would say things like, let me recap. Let me summarize. Here, these are your main points. So you make it shorter so you can more quickly deal with the situation. So again, you're active listening. You show the customer that you're listening. If we had listened first time here, we wouldn't have 5 tickets in a row. So you want to listen first time round. You get those key points. You repeat back to clarify, give the customer the opportunity to correct you or to give you more information. And only when you fully understand what those points are you in a position to suggest a solution. Okay, let's look at our next example. And you can stop the video and read through that chat. And this time we're on the topic of insulting or challenging behaviour. And of course we dealt with this in the first day of our training. What were the key points behind that? Well, firstly, you don't want to ignore it. You want to deal with it. You want to deal with it because you want, of course, to remove the upset for the customer. And you want to deal with it as well because you don't want to have to constantly come back to this and be upset yourself. So how do we deal with it? You want to explore why the customer is upset. You don't want to jump to conclusions as to why they are upset. And you don't want to tell them not to be upset. That'll just make them even more upset. So what you want to do is maybe write something such as, I can see that you're frustrated. I'm here to help. Please tell me what the problem is or what the issues are. So in this example that we've got, the customer is again obviously a bit frustrated. They feel that they're not getting their point across, or that the Dynatrace rep is not understanding the point. They're using the term stop waffling, which is somewhat of a slang or colloquial word for talking too much, that you're not getting to the point. And you can see that they make mention of that twice. You're waffling, you're not answering my question. So they're being a little bit insulting here, but they're being insulting because they're frustrated. They feel that the question's not being answered. They feel that the person on the other side's not getting to the point, that they don't understand them. So what can we do about this? Again, we need to actively listen to the customer. So when a customer says you're not getting the point, for example, you want to say, what is the point? Please, can you explain the point to me? I want to help. I want to understand. Also, you might have a situation here where the customer is questioning your capacity to do the job. In that situation, you just stay on the topic again. Stay on the task. The task is that you find out what the problem is and you address the problem. The customer also maybe is acting like a bit like they know everything, that they're the know-all. If you have a customer doing this, you just have to play along with it. I mean, they probably want you to recognize their expertise and knowledge, so you can do so. You can say, I can see that you know a lot about the topic. I can see you're quite expert on the topic, and you can ask them for recommendations or for maybe a suggestion or why they think there's a problem. So you can turn that into an active exercise to find out the causes of the problem and what possible solutions there are for the problem. Last point there is the customer feeling or fearing a lack of respect. Well, the customer certainly feels that he's not being listened to. So you have to very quickly deal with that. You can say, look, I'm here to help you. I want to find out the information in order to be able to do that. So please tell me what the issues are. And as we have already discussed then, we active listen as we receive that information. This is quite easy to deal with. It's really just a case of active listening. But what do we do in a situation where a customer can be even more abusive than this? What if we have a situation where a customer is exceptionally rude, that they call you names, that they insult you, that they say things damaging about your person, might make a sexual remark or a racial remark, something about your gender? This is obviously a much more serious issue. In that situation, you cannot tolerate that. You should end that chat and you should report it. Thankfully, of course, we don't often come across that. Generally, the abuse that we get or the insulting or challenging behaviour is something similar to what we see in this example. At this level, that's what you need to do. You need to take a step back. You have to avoid getting emotional yourself. You have to avoid getting angry. You have to avoid being in any way difficult back yourself. Remember, the customer is not out to insult you personally. They're just feeling frustrated. Of course, there's some insults, as we've discussed, that are not acceptable. There's no excuse for that. But generally, in a situation like the one we've got here in the chat, the customer is just frustrated. And we have to find a way of dealing with that frustration. The way to do it is actively listening. Explore the issues, show that you're listening to the customer, repeat back what they've said, and then you'll find that the customer will start to calm down and will start to deal with the situation in a professional way, because you're dealing with it in a professional way. Alright, let's look at another example. This one I've called feeling the heat. And when I say feeling the heat, I don't mean for Dynatrace, I mean for the customer as well. The customer is feeling the heat. Let's not forget that our customers have customers. Our customers have bosses. Our customers have deadlines and tight schedules. All of the stresses and issues that, of course, we would have in Dynatrace. And we've got to respect that. And we've got to show that we are considerate of that and that we take those things very seriously. So this is a situation, it often happens that a customer thinks that you don't fully understand the full implications and the full urgency of the matter. You can see they even use the term urgency. And of course, what customers often do in this situation is they want to escalate it. They think by escalating it that Dynatrace will see it as a more urgent and a more serious matter, and that will be given more critical attention. Of course, you don't want to be escalating. That's not a reason to escalate. So what you need to do is to satisfy the customer that you're listening to them, that you understand the importance, and that you are just as anxious as they are to find a solution to the problem in good time. So when you see a chat such as this, let's look at the customer. For urgency, please consult. When you see a customer mention things like deadlines and we have tight deadlines to implement, you want to explore that. So you want to say, I see this is important. You mentioned tight deadlines. When is your deadline? For urgency, you say this is urgent. When does this need to be done? Right away, then the customer will see that you're treating this as a time-sensitive matter. Okay, and it's a form of active listening again. You can see that I'm repeating the words back. Deadlines, tight deadlines, urgency. So that'll give your customer, that'll start to calm the customer down. The customer just wants to see that you realize the importance. So also we've got an issue from the Dynatrace side of things here, that the customer's not providing sufficient information, that he's not copying the information. I mean, obviously this is a review with maybe to an escalation. In that case, you have to flag what you need to the customer. You have to say that in order to escalate this, I need this. So you very clearly spell out what it is that you need. If something's important, you want to spell it out. So you'd start your sentence, this is important. This is what I need. This you must do. These are clear flags to a customer that leads the conversation and helps you get the information that you require. Okay, we touched on escalation in our last slide. And of course, customers often ask you to escalate things, but that's not necessary that you do so. I mean, the reason that they generally ask for an escalation is they think that you haven't listened to them, that you haven't understood the point, that you don't see the importance or the severity or the urgency of what they need. So always bear that in mind. When a customer is asking for an escalation, it's generally for those reasons and not because they actually do need to escalate the matter. So what should we do? Well, firstly, you need to fully explore the issue. And you do that, of course, by active listening. Customers are generally afraid that you're not going to respond in time, so they feel a need to escalate to try and get a better sense of urgency. So when you do eventually understand the issue and you promise action, it's important that you do so in an appropriate timescale. You don't want to be using terms like soon or we'll get back to you shortly. This means nothing to your customer. This just makes them anxious. You need to give them more measurable, exact timestamps. So you want to say things like today or within 24 hours or by 5 o'clock. You want to make it quite clear when it is that they will get a response or an action on their issue. But what happens if you've done all of that and it's still a situation where the customer feels that this needs to be escalated, and perhaps indeed you think it has to be escalated? Well, what you need to do is to make sure that you've got the information, the necessary information to pass on to the technician. So make sure that you collate that information. If you don't have the information, you should be making it clear to the customer that that needs to be provided before you can escalate the matter, because that's necessary to the escalation. Once you have escalated it, you want to stay in the loop. It's still your duty to the customer to find a solution. So be professional, just not in terms of the customer, but also with your colleagues. Make sure that you show that you're taking this seriously and you're going to follow up and make sure that the matter is dealt with. So don't just see this as a way to dump things or to get rid of things. You must follow up. Okay, our last example of real life chat situation. This time we have a customer who's, well, as we've seen already, often frustrated, feeling a bit emotional. Is perhaps using some inappropriate language, inappropriate behaviour. Again, just take some time and read through the chat. So again, let's consider why customers become emotional, why they're upset, why they get frustrated. It nearly always is the situation that they feel that you have not listened and that you don't get the severity or the time urgency or the general importance of the problem. That message that you do listen, that you have understood the problem, and that you do realise the importance of the problem, that you always want to get across to the customer. Here we have the customer asking a question. I would really like to try to understand the reasoning behind this. In that situation, when the customer is asking you for information, you need to respond to that. What the Dynatrace representative does well here is that they do recognize the customer's frustration. I understand your frustration. I'd maybe avoid saying I understand. I mean, do you really understand the customer's frustration at this stage? I would say perhaps not. You need to fully find out what the issues are behind that frustration. Then you'll be in a position to say that you understand and to suggest a remedy or a solution. So again, this is a case of active listening. Customers saying things like, I'm not very confident at the moment. You need to recognize that. You need to explore that. Say that you're not confident at the moment. Have you had a difficulty before? Has this not been dealt with properly in the past? Is there a time issue here? So these are examples of actively listening to that red flag, if you like, that your customer has given you there, which is, I'm not very confident at the moment. And then you see the customer, it starts to become quite demanding, demands an answer to a question and goes instantly yes or no, very, very forceful. And the Dynatrace representative deals with that well. I mean, you have to put a stop to that behaviour right away. So you have to make the point that you're there to help, that you want to help, but that they need to provide you with the information that you need to be able to help.